Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this second phase of the webinar. We are glad that you could join us again in this round two of human resource starting from zero. Today we shall be handling the practical aspect of it. And I want to welcome everyone joining in from different nations. I know quite a number of you enjoyed this session last week, on Tuesday, and today is going to be more of practical. And I'd like to welcome you all as you join in into this last segment of human resource starting from zero. I'd like to welcome all the people who are joining in from West Africa, East Africa, South and Central Africa. I see a number of you already in the house, and we are privileged that you could keep this time to the dot. And yeah, I know for Day and Anatoli, Akim, Lungwe, you people asked very fundamental questions last week. And today we want to see how practical this will play into your business aspect. For Day being one of those who said he has already had volunteers, and I believe I will be asking a few questions about what we learned last week. Maybe you will be reminding us on those pivotal points that you took home as a take-home from the webinar. So you're most welcome, and we want to start it right away and introducing our guest speaker or our presenter today. Is the same person who had a lot of humor and a lot of enthusiasm, knowledgeable on the topic of human resource. She is Oluwatoyin Omotayo from Nigeria, and she holds a bachelor's degree in psychology from WMI, Awolowo University, and also holds a master's degree in labor and industrial relations with a specialization in human resource management. From the University of Lagos, both universities in Nigeria. She has attended so many other trainings, and she is an associate of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria and a member of Human Resource Business Professional Network, United States of America, and is also a licensed human resource practitioner. This is the person we are talking about, the person of the age of the 21st century. She is a mentor, she's a coach, she's a trainer. She's everything you would want to talk about in ensuring that the young professionals get equipped with the current millennial skills that they want to have to thrive in the global trends. Currently, she's serving as a Chief Executive Officer at SESEWA, a Nigerian's first internship-focused and foremost career development organization, where she's providing strategic direction and implementation with a team of young, passionate people who are committed in solving Africans' most pressing needs, apparently the unemployment and educational challenges. I'd like to welcome you to speak to the large audience that we are having, the brilliant class that you had on Tuesday. You're welcome, Madam Oluwatoyin.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good afternoon from Nigeria, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you, wherever you might be dialing in from. I am truly excited to be with you again. And I already see some names who are already my best friends. I see a lot of names that I saw on Tuesday. So I am really excited to be with you today, right? I might not be able to call out the names, but I see some names, I see some new names. So trust me, I'm your girl, and I'm here for you today, okay? Of course, I would always like to say a big thank you to WMI, who, they're doing a phenomenal work, right? With engaging scholars and equipping scholars with the necessary competencies, that we need to thrive in this world, okay? So I'm really excited to be here, and it's always a privilege to be with you guys. So because of our time and because I want us to have some time quite a lot of time actually for questions, because this is the practical, part of HR that we're going into. I'm going to spend about, say, 30 to 35 minutes presenting, talking to you about some concepts in HR, after which I will hand over to Bonnie, who would help us moderate the question and answer session so that we can get a lot of practical insights, right, before we leave here today, okay? So as I start to share my screen, tell me in the chat section how you're feeling today. One word. So let's go very quickly. How are you feeling today? If you're feeling sleepy, you're feeling like being under the duvet, you're feeling warm, you're feeling hot, you're feeling winter, just tell me how you're feeling today. Okay, Anatoly is feeling curious. Okay, I like that. Napayok is excited. Napayok is always excited, by the way. You're my girl. Okay, James is okay. I believe this is excited. Fred is feeling motivated. I love it. I love the motivation. Okay. Let me read from you. Okay, Fode. Okay, of course, my Fode is here again. Feeling energized and inspired. I love it. James is feeling awesome. Well done. Let me hear from more of you, how you're feeling, and then we'll go straight into what we have for today. Let me know how you're feeling. How are you feeling? I'm feeling so energized. I've had such a productive week, so I'm looking forward to the weekend. Akim just took a nap, so he's feeling refreshed. I really want to be like you right now. Trust me. Okay, Lovett is excited for this session. All right. I am already so excited. I'm pumped. I'm energized because of all your great comments. Okay, so we're going to dive right into it. Okay, so welcome to the Human Resource Training second class. Of course, for some of you who know me already, and for my new folks who are just joining me, my name is Oluwatoyin Omotayo, and I am a people development partner, an HR professional. I'm a career coach, and I'm also an author. I am the CEO of SESEWA. SESEWA is Nigeria's first internship-focused and career development organization. So you might want to check us out on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Twitter. We provide career opportunities to young scholars like you. So I'm looking forward to read from you. I'm looking forward to see your connections. Okay, so let's do a bit of recap from what we talked about on Tuesday. On Tuesday, very quickly, we talked about the elements of HRM, human resource activities, the importance of HRM to the workforce. Every time you hear me say HRM, what I just mean is human resource management. We also talked about how we can determine our staffing needs as a startup organization. You're a young CBO, how can you determine the number or the kind of people you would need to hire in your first few years, okay? We also talked about the different types of team members that you might need to have for your first few years of operations or that you might come across, okay? We also went into discussing some of the benefits that you can provide for your unpaid team members. So I understand that for some organizations, you probably have not raised any capital, you have maybe little or no investment yet. How can you provide certain benefits to your employees who are not looking to get money? What other things can you give to them? We talked about that. And we also talked about the different strategies, right, that you can use for hiring both paid and unpaid positions, okay? So very quickly, we will go straight into what we have for today. Our focus for today is going to be on reviewing applications, okay? So you put out a vacancy, what are you looking for in a candidate? How do you determine that this is the person that you should be hiring? This is the person you should be getting on your team. So we're going to look at how to review applications or CVs, what to look out for in a candidate, okay? We're also going to look at how to conduct interviews. What are the questions to ask? How should the interviews be structured? We're also going to look at how and why you need to make a final hiring decision. After you must have interviewed a whole lot of people or candidates, what are the things that would help you to make a great final hiring decision? Okay, and when you hire these great people, we're going to look at how you can create expectations. Remember that when employees come into the organization, they have expectations. And you also, as an employer, you also have expectations from your team members, okay? So we are going to take a look at that. All right. So let's go straight into what we have for today. Now, let's start with reviewing job applications. So say, for example, you already determined the role that you need to hire for. So yes, on Tuesday, we talked about as a CBO, we said one of the roles that you should be looking at is volunteers, right? Or a volunteers coordinator. So when you send out this vacancy, when you put out this vacancy, what are the things you should look for? But first of all, let's look at what a job application form is, right? So a job application form, as I said here, is a document that is used to gather information from job applicants during the hiring process. So basically what a job application form is just a simple document, a clear document that you as an employer or as a recruiting manager will use to gather information about your potential candidates. And this form covers both personal and professional information. So you have things like the age, you can have things like the age, you can have things like their email address, their location, maybe their status, and those are on the personal sides, right? And then on the professional side, you will have things like their competencies, their job experiences, their academic qualifications, their professional qualifications, their references, and all of those things. Remember, you are hiring a holistic human being. And here's what I like to tell people. When you're hiring, it is important that you consider all factors apart from the professional factors. So some people might say, oh, I only need them to work for me. So I'm going to just decide based on the fact that they have all the experiences. But if you remember what we talked about on Tuesday, that you should not only consider competencies. Who wants to remind me what we said you should also consider when you're hiring? Who wants to remind me? We mentioned something apart from competencies. We said you should also consider one other thing when you're hiring. Let me see in the chat section. You can guess, trust me, there is no wrong answer, as it were. So feel free to tell me in this chat section. Who remembers? Who remembers? Okay, I'm going to start calling names because I see some people. But tell me, we said apart from competencies, there is something else that you should look out for when you are hiring. Exactly. Okay, you guys are my people. You know it, right? Neselele says applicants will share the same vision with you. Absolutely. Now pay your culture fit. Oh gosh, I am so excited to be in this class. Okay. Yes, culture fit. So we said when you're trying to hire beyond competencies, you must also look for people who share the same vision with you, who are also a culture fit for your organization. Okay, and that's why we consider both the personal and the professional information, right? And you review this based on the set requirements. So for example, as an employer, as a recruiter, you need to know what you're looking for in a candidate before you even start recruiting. When you have those listed items, when you have those specifications, you can then go on to start to call for applications because you already have set criteria and set recruitment. All you need to do is to find the candidate that matches your earlier set requirements. And I hope you really understand that, okay? Now, what are some of the information that should be provided by the hiring team? As much as you're looking for great candidates, you also want the candidates to know about your organization. The decision process is a two-way street. You want to make a decision on a great candidate. The candidate also wants to make a decision on a great company. So what are the information to provide? You need to tell them about your company, your goals, your vision. You also need to provide the job title. So when you design the form should carry your company, your goals, and your vision. Of course, in summary, you should also have the title, the job title clearly written. You should also specify the contract type. How long is the job for? Is it a permanent job? Is it a full-time job? Is it a 6 months job contract? Is it an internship? Is it a volunteering role? You need to be clear about that. you also need to specify the job description. What exactly will this candidate be doing when they come into the company? You need to be very clear. They will be doing this, and that. You need to be very clear. You also have job requirements. Now, the difference between description and requirements, I know you can already see it on the screen. Job description is what is going to be done. Job requirement is who can do this job, who is the perfect fit for this job description. Do you see that? You also need to indicate the salary range. A lot of times you see organizations who put out vacancies, but who don't put the salary range. What would happen is that you are going to get a lot of applicants. And when you get to the interview stage, you realize that there is a mismatch between what they are expecting to be paid, or if they're even expecting to be paid, and what you're willing to offer. So I will advise that you put in the salary range when you're trying to advertise for a role. Another thing you need to be clear about is the reporting line. Who is this person going to be reporting to? If you're hiring volunteers, they know they are going to be reporting to the volunteers coordinator. If you're hiring an operations manager, the person knows they're going to be reporting to the director, right? The director of programs will most likely be reporting to the founder or the chief executive officer. Do you see that? Another thing to indicate will be the submission method. How do you want them to submit the application? Is it by sending an email? Do they have to send their CV to an email, or they need to apply through a job board? Okay. You also need to specify the application deadline. At what point would CVs no longer be considered for this role? Okay. One other thing you should specify is when they should expect a callback. I know that sometimes it might be difficult to really gauge when you would call a candidate back, but if possible, you might want to give a bit of timeline, right? It could be a stretch, but give a range of timeline. You could say between 2 to 4 weeks or within a month, so that the candidates are not just left in limbo, so that they can follow through with the recruitment process. Okay, now, what do you look out for in a candidate's CV, or when a candidate has applied to you? What are the things you should pay attention to find great talent? The first thing, of course, this is a no-brainer. Anybody sending a CV should know that it would carry their personal details, their name, their gender, if it is required. Some people like to request for specific genders so that they can have gender balance in their company or in their organization. Okay, and also location. It could either be maybe close proximity to the company's office, or maybe close proximity to where operations would usually take place. Okay. Of course, they will be sending you their CV and their cover letter. There will also be references, because as much as you are hiring, you need to make sure that there are people who can vouch for this person. So you need to request for references. And this simply means, give me 2 names of people who, if I call them, they can vouch for you. They trust you enough to do this job, right? So references are also quite important. You also need to look at their employment history. How long has this person been employed for? Have they worked in the space to which they are applying? So for example, someone is applying for the role of operations manager, but in their history, they've never done anything operations. That gives you a red flag, because anybody who is applying for an operations manager, right, not even an operations officer, would need to show experience in managing operations. So you need to look out for employment history as well. What have they been doing for the past few years or few months? Okay. You also need to look at their educational and professional qualifications, depending on the role that you are applying, that you are advertising for. For example, if someone is going to apply for the role of volunteers coordinator, what are some of the things, what are some of the qualities that you should look out for? Let me hear you in the chat section. A volunteers coordinator, what qualities do you think you should be looking out for? Someone who is going to be in charge of people, is going to be in charge of volunteers who are not going to get paid. Remember, what are the qualities that you should be looking out for? Tell me, let me see you in the chat section. Tell me. What are some of the qualities that you should look out for in a volunteers coordinator? Christiana, well done. Teamwork spirit. Yes, because you're going to be working with teams. Okay. Akim says good communication skills. This is amazing, because you're going to have to communicate what we're doing, where we're doing it, So it's very important. Christiana also says calmness. I think this is really important because remember, not everybody is like you. Not everybody has the same attitude, the same personality. So you also need someone who can experience calmness at certain points in time. Okay, I'm loving the suggestions coming in. Napeyok says should be a good communicator. Fode says should be persuasive. Absolutely. Anatoly says a good team leader. This is key. Alira says critical thinker. Yes, yes, yes. Christina says good human relation. Okay. Tio says interpersonal skills. I love it. Charles says conflict resolution. You guys are blowing my mind. You know these things already. Absolutely. Resilience, right? Fearless approach. So these are some of the things that you need to consider when you're hiring a volunteers coordinator. What should you be looking out for? When you're hiring a finance person, what should you be looking out for? They must fall in love with maths. They must love calculations. They must love numbers. Flawless, exactly. A finance officer should not be prone to mistakes. Okay, so those are some of the things that you need to take a look at, right? Another thing you need to look out for is their answers to scenario-based questions. What are scenario-based questions? So, for example, you say you want to hire a volunteers coordinator. Some of the questions you're going to be asking will sound like, tell me a time that you have successfully led a team, or tell me a time that you have experienced conflict and how you manage the conflict. The answers will tell you if this person will fit into the role of leading the volunteers, or if you want to consider them for something else, okay? Also, reason for applying. What is the reason for applying for this role? Is it just because of the salary, which is a good reason, or it's because they want to be part of the solution? They want to help you to solve problems. So these are some of the things that you should look out for in a candidate. And also, date available to start. You ask them, when are you available to start? What is if they're currently working in a place, you ask them, what is their notice period, so that you can know when they're going to come on board. All right, let's move very quickly. So now you have done this, you have sent out the vacancy, you've gotten CVs and applications. How do you choose a finalist? I'll run through this very quickly so that we can take questions. Now, there's something we call shortlisting. And this is the part where you pick out from the large pool of candidates you have, you pick out the close to the best. Now, I use the word close to the best because at the shortlisting stage, you will still pick out more than one person. So for example, if you want to fill one role, you will most likely get about, say, 20 CVs. Shortlisting requires that you take the top 5 candidates and then subject them to another level of interview, if you see what I'm saying. So shortlisting is the process of identifying the candidates from your applicant pool, the large pool that you have, identifying the people who meet the required criteria and are willing to move forward in the application process, okay? Now, I know that this can be really hard, especially if you either don't find great candidates at first, or you find too many good candidates. In fact, Ideal did this research that says 52% of talent acquisition leaders or of recruiters say that the most difficult part of their job is shortlisting the right candidates. Because let me tell you what, when you put on an application, you would get a lot of CVs. And so shortlisting is important so that you can match those who fit to the exact role that you're trying to recruit for, okay? Now, how do you shortlist? What are the things that you look out for? I already gave a brief overview of this when I started to talk, about reviewing application form. The first thing you need to do is to determine your shortlist criteria, right? What are the things that you're looking out for in terms of their education, work experience, their skills and their knowledge, personality traits, competencies? These are some things that you want to look at, right? Then you decide on the essential criteria. Now, there are things that are must-haves and there are things that are nice-to-haves. For a volunteers coordinator, a must-have, right, is maybe an experience in leading a team. A nice-to-have could be a certification in volunteering. It's a nice-to-have because the truth is, That someone has a certificate does not mean that they can practically lead, and you need to pay attention to that. Okay, so a must-have would be experience in leading team. These are the things that you look out for. Okay, and then when you start to do that, you create a shortlist scorecard. Now, let me give you an example that is on my screen. Let me get this as practical as possible. So, for example, we have 3 candidates here on the screen. We have Connor Taylor, we have Jimmy, and we have Javion. Now, this recruiter has 4 criteria that they are testing these 3 candidates on: educational level, their retail experience, their customer service experience, their communication skills, and whether they are fit or unfit for the job. Basically 4. The 5th one is the final say. Okay, now for Connor Taylor, when you see 2 is the desired. So it means that nobody can score more than 2. Now, Connor has 1. It means that he has 1/2. In terms of retail experience, right, it has 1 year experience. And what they're looking for is actually they're actually looking for 2 years. So he has 1 year experience. So it scores 1/2. In terms of customer service experience, the highest they're looking for is 3, but Connor has 2. So he gets 2/3. In terms of communication skill, 1 is poor and 3 is strong. Connor has 3. That means that Connor has 3 on communication skills, 2 on customer service experience, 1 on retail experience, 1 on educational level. Now, if you look at all of these other candidates, you see that for Connor, it says that he's unfit. Because of our time, I would have loved to ask you, even though he has the highest in communication skills, why is he unfit for the job? I know if I had so much time, I would have asked you, but even though he had the highest in communication skills, why is he unfit for the job? Now, when you're trying to create a shortlist card, you need to sum all the criteria that you are looking for. The person with the highest is who gets the job. So even though he scored highest in communication skill, he scored the lowest in retail experience and educational level. And what that simply means is that he's going to have scored lesser than every other candidate. Now, this allows you to easily identify those who rank the strongest and are able to move forward. Okay, so when you do this table, you do this numbering, you do this ranking, it tells you who fits the best. Remember, what we're looking for is who fits the most, not just who fits. If you see what I'm saying, okay? If Connor was the only candidate, they could have taken him, but it means that there are 2 more candidates that are better than him, okay? And that's how you create a shortlist scorecard. Okay, let's move on. Now, the 3rd thing you need to do is to determine the number of candidates you are able to shortlist and interview. Now, you are going to get a lot of applications, and you are not going to be able to interview all of them. In my organization, when we put out vacancies, in a day, we get at least 50 CVs. Now, imagine if we leave that open for a week, we would get at least 350 CVs. Obviously, I cannot, and you also cannot, interview 350 people. Okay, so you need to determine the number of candidates you're going to shortlist and interview, right? How many candidates do you have to shortlist to get a successful hire? If you're looking for a volunteers coordinator, you'll be looking at interviewing at most maybe 5 persons, 4 to 5 persons to pick the perfect fit. Okay, how many people do you have resources and capacity to interview? If you're the only one in the organization and you want to interview, you know that you can possibly not do more than 5 interviews in a day. You can't do more than that. If you do more than that, you will start to wear out, you will start to get tired, and it could even create a bias in the interview. Have you noticed that when you're speaking to someone, you speak to the first person in the morning, the second person, the third person, by the time you get to the 4th person, you are tired. You just want to go and sleep. And so you need to determine your own capacity in how many people you want to interview. For high volume recruitment roles, like for example, customer service, these are roles where you find a lot of applicants, where you will need to hire hundreds of people. You might have to shortlist any candidate that meets your criteria. Okay, all right. Let's move on. Now, in conducting interviews, So we are shortlisted. Out of 100 people who have applied for volunteers coordinator, we have picked 5 people. How do we determine who is the best amongst these 5 people? Let's take a look at it. Now, there are some interview elements that you can use. So the first thing you have is the competency-based assessment. And what it does is that it helps you to test the skill, the knowledge, and the abilities of the candidates. Okay, so competency just means SKA, skills, knowledge, abilities, or attitudes of the candidates. And another thing you need to do is to ask technical and behavioral questions, and what I like to call scenario-based questions. An example of a scenario-based question would be, tell me a time where you had to lead a team. Now, that's an open-ended question, and it requires an open-ended answer. You must try not to ask yes or no questions, okay? Because you want to be able to assess if this person is actually fit for the role. So you ask open-ended questions like, tell me a time, have you ever been in conflict and how did you manage it? Have you ever had to liaise between a vendor and a client? How did you manage it? Those are open-ended questions. And when you're interviewing, the panel should be made up of either yourself, maybe as the director of the organization, and also the HR manager. Remember that we said that HR is important, right, in our organizations, okay? You can also have the line manager of the role that you're hiring for. One thing I would also want you to do, or I would like you to do, is to give room for the candidates to ask questions. Now, depending on the type of questions the candidates ask, you can tell if a candidate would be a fit for your organization, okay? As a career coach, as an interview coach, I always coach my candidates. Whenever they get to interviews, don't leave that interview without asking a question, because the recruiter wants to know that you are able to think on your feet, you are able to process, okay? Give room for candidates to ask questions, appreciate them for coming as well. Of course, we already talked about this. So these are examples of competency-based questions. So you want to test leadership skills. You'll be asking questions like, how will you describe your leadership style? Okay, you want to test their initiative. You ask them, describe your most impactful initiative to date. You want to test their resilience. You want to ask them, have you ever been on a project that took so long and that was stretching? How did you manage it? How did you manage the client, right? Or the parties involved? These are questions that you want. These are competency-based questions that allows you to get exactly how the person is, their competencies, okay? All right, let's move very quickly. Now, what are some of the things that you need to take note of when you are conducting interviews? You must learn to identify your own biases, okay? And you have different kinds of bias. You have the stereotypical, the recency effect, the halo effect, the on effect. And for example, some bias could look like, because someone is not from your country or from your tribe, it doesn't mean they can't do the job. So you have to be careful about your own bias. I once had a Zimbabwean on my team, and it was such a beautiful work experience, okay? So you must learn to identify your own bias. Don't hire because they are from the same country as you. Don't hire because they look like you. Don't hire because they were the first you spoke to. Don't hire because they are the last you spoke to. Remember what we're looking for: competency and culture fit, okay? And also when you're interviewing, learn to discard the noise. There's something that candidates do that can be quite funny, right? They can provide you with irrelevant information. So for example, someone dresses so well, they look so sharp, doesn't mean they can do the job. So you need to be able to remove that distraction and focus on their competency. And the fact that maybe someone doesn't dress so sharp, you know, like Bonnie was earlier, doesn't mean they can't do the job. Okay, so you need to be able to pick those things, okay? Slow down your decision making as well. Wait till you have interviewed all the candidates before you make a decision, okay? Another thing you need to do is to focus on the job-related characteristics, right? There are certain questions that I've had experiences, you know, candidates complaining to me to say, I went for this interview and they were asking me, where does my mother live? Or what's my favorite food? yeah, maybe those are nice questions, but remember, those questions have nothing to do with the job at hand. So you need to ask job-related questions. Okay, I already talked about this last one. Resist hiring in your own image. Someone looks like you, they smile like you, they talk like you, they are from the same country, they are from the same tribe. You need to take those things aside and focus on the importance, focus on the competencies. Can they do the job? Are they culture fit? Are they competent enough? Those are the things that you need to pay attention to. And how do you make a final hiring decision? Of course, we already talked about, you need to review the scorecards, request references, conduct a final interview if need be, and then prepare the contracts, and then you make the candidate an offer. Because you already have a criteria, you are definitely going to know when you find your perfect candidate. Let me also say that people are not perfect. So you must also be careful in your search for a perfect candidate that you don't discard all the candidates. People can learn on the job. So depending on the level that you're hiring for, you might need to give people a chance to prove themselves. And that's why when you're making an offer, you must include what we call a probation period, which means that we are going to hire you and observe you for the next 5 or 6 months, after which we will decide to make you permanent or we'll let you go based on performance. Okay. All right. Now you've made an offer has been accepted. What are the things that we start to look at? How do we meet expectations? Okay, there's something we'll call the contract of employment. I already talked about that, right? That's the formal offer letter that you give to the candidate. The employer has duties. You as an employer, you have duties. The employee also has duties. And one of your duties as an employer, which is one of the most important one, is that if you are hiring a paid position, you have a duty to pay wages and salaries. You have a duty to provide work, and you also have a duty to ensure the safety of your employee. Also, the employee has duties to you. They have a duty to obey restrictions. They have a duty to act in good faith. They have a duty to work for what you are hiring them for. All of these expectations is what you should either set in written form, which we call written contracts, or you communicate verbally, which we call psychological contracts, right? They are unwritten expectations. So you must have a conversation with your potential employee before they start work. You must have that conversation. What are you expecting from me? These are the things I expect from you. You set performance indicators and all of those things that they must do on the job, okay? Now, as we start to round up, okay, we're getting there. How do we create goals? You've already hired this fantastic person. We need to create goals so that we can know that they are meeting their target. You hire a volunteers coordinator. How do you know they are doing what they should be doing at the right time? The first thing you need to do when you hire is to craft clearly written job descriptions. The challenges you might have if you don't craft this is someone is doing what they're not supposed to be doing, or they are not doing what they are supposed to be doing. And that's the reason why you need clearly written job descriptions. You also need to set SMART goals. What are SMART goals? SMART goals are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound, right? You need to set SMART goals rather. You co-create the goals. So you sit down with the employee and then you create the goals. What are we going to achieve in the next 3 months? What are we going to achieve in the next 5 months? How do we know we have been successful in the next 6 months? These are things that you must have clearly spelled out. You would also set KPIs, what we call key performance indicators, right? And this simply means, how do we determine success at the end of a few months or a few years, okay? Of course, you will have moments where you need to adjust the performance metrics. It could be based on maybe environmental factors, labor regulations, and all of those things, okay? Another thing you need to do is to regularly conduct performance assessment. What I tell people is when you hire an employee, you should do an assessment after 3 months, at least, or maybe, yeah, at least 3 months. At the end of 3 months, or even before 3 months, maybe at the end of 1 month or 2 months, you can call them and say, how have you done in the past 1 month? What are the challenges that you faced on your job? What are the resources that you need? How can we help you do better on your job? So those are things that you must have in conversation, giving them feedback on their performance as well. And then you will identify the skill gaps. So in the past 2 months, you see that this volunteers coordinator has done so well in managing people, leading people. But when it comes on the reporting line, which is to create reports of what maybe our team or his team has done, they have difficulties in writing, right? Or in creating reports. What that tells you is that you need to learn how to close that writing gap. So even though they do so well with managing the team, with leading the team, there's still a gap in them coming up with their monthly reports. So you might want to take them on maybe writing trainings, or you want to expose them to knowledge that allows them to improve on their writing skills. Okay. Now, when you have this beautiful team, it's one thing to have a team. It's another thing to keep a team. And for you to build legacy with your vision, for you to build sustainable models, you need to learn how to keep your team. Okay. So what are some of the tips for team cohesion? How do you keep a team? The first thing you have is to develop clear purpose and ensure that everyone on the team understands. We already talked about this a lot, that beyond competency, remember, you are hiring for culture fit and someone who understands and buys into your vision. So everybody must know what we're doing. You should also establish rules of engagement, our policies, our procedures, how we do what we do. What are the boundaries that we must abide by? What are the things that we can't do as a team? Remember, we're a team. And so nobody can go on their own journey, okay? You must also, as a leader, you must model and encourage respectful argumentation. Because you have different people on your team, you are going to have different opinions and different suggestions because they're different personalities. And remember, conflict is inevitable in the sense that you can manage conflict. So you must learn to encourage respectful argumentation. People are free to drop their opinions, but they must do it without hurting the other person. You must help your team to understand that conflict is normal, right? But we must learn to manage conflict. Define clear commitments and responsibilities. Who is doing what and as at what time should it be done? You must also encourage trust and openness, okay? Everybody must learn to trust one another. We have to be open with one another. We have to be vulnerable. We're a team. And if we're spending most of our lifetime at work, if you're spending most of our daytime at work, then we need to trust one another. Also learn about each other on the team. So beyond the work that we do, we also need to learn about our team members. What are your favorite meals? Or maybe when we're going for hangouts, we can share a meal, or we can visit a fun place together. What are your hobbies? What do you do for fun? So we want to learn about each other as well. These are the things that can help you to build a very strong team. Okay. All right, as we round up so that we can take questions, we already talked about how you can create your ideal team. And remember, it's a holistic process. And this begins from the moment you realize that there's a need to fill this role. So from the moment you identify a vacancy, recruitment starts from there. Creating your team starts from there. Goes from what you want the person to do, the vision you want to achieve, the competencies you need, the culture fit of the person. And so in order to build a team that satisfies your requirements, you must ensure that you are using appropriate parameters. You are recruiting for a volunteers coordinator. You are looking out for their leadership abilities, their team spirit. You might not necessarily be looking out for their finance abilities, of their financial abilities, because remember what they are coming to do. So you must use appropriate parameters to determine and to assess the candidates. Here's one thing I'm going to leave you with. There is no perfect candidate. There is no perfect person on the face of the earth. I don't know if there are perfect people here, but there are no perfect people that I know of. And so you must ensure that your ideal candidates are not, you're not looking for perfection. You're looking for improvement. You're looking for teachability. You're looking for progress, okay? So you must learn to focus on essential qualities that are needed to succeed on the job, not someone who looks exactly like you. So understanding that there are no perfect candidates would help you to streamline your focus in creating your ideal team. At this point, we have now come to the end of this presentation, and I would like to hand over to Bonnie, who would help us moderate our question and our answers, our question and answer sessions appropriately. Bonnie, over to you.
Wow, wow, wow. This is a very great information that has been delivered. And I know the 4 days of this world is warming up with hot questions for us, like it happened last week. But one thing that has come up in my private inbox here, a question coming out from one of the participants is saying, there is online hiring and physical hiring, like physical interviewing and online interviewing. How do you find the challenges between the two, and which one is the best to go by for a starter?
Very good question. Depending on what you want the person to come and do. So for example, if you're looking for a volunteers coordinator, so for example, if you have a CBO, which is a community-based organization, which means that you do a lot of field work, maybe you go to maybe IDP camps, and all of those things, you need someone who is physically present. You need someone who's going to be speaking to your volunteers. And so for that, you're most likely going to maybe do a Zoom interview first and then do a physical interview. Now, if the job is fully remote, then you can do a Zoom interview. But if you need the person to be present in a physical location, you might need to do both a virtual and a physical interview. So it's depending on your preference. Personally, we do both of them. So the first level of the interview is for us virtual. We just like to shortlist, and then our clients do a physical interview. They want to see who they're working with, what you're going to look like, how you dress, and all of those things. So depending on your preference, both interviews are okay. But if it's a remote job, if it's fully remote, then you have no need doing a physical interview. You just do a remote interview.
The second one is, which one is more challenging and which one would be more appropriate for the starter?
Which one is more challenging? I would say they both share almost the same, because if you are sitting in front of a laptop and interviewing 6 people, you can get tired. If it was physical, interviewing 6 people, you can get tired. So they actually would have challenges. I think the challenge that virtual has over physical is the network or the internet challenges. So you constantly have internet failures, power outage. You can experience that with virtual interviews. So physical interviews would usually not have those challenges. Now, which one is appropriate? Like I said, there's no one best mode of interview. It's depending on your preference. If you're hiring a fully remote role, you have no need doing a physical interview. If you're hiring for someone that you need to see physically, for someone that would come into the office or a building, then you need to do a physical interview after you must have done maybe a virtual interview. Yeah.
Another question coming in here. There's a question saying, is it smart to try and recruit university student volunteers to help support my new NGO activity? Or can I trust that they have the time to commit?
That's a very fantastic question. Because what we do in my organization is we work with a lot of young people. We work with a lot of undergraduates and recent graduates. Depending on the level of your organization. Now, if it's a young organization, and depending on what you're doing, young people are usually very energetic. They have ideas, they can help you, get your hands on deck. However, if you need expertise that is on the high side, if you need high expertise, you need some high knowledge, you might not be able to hire students because they don't have the sufficient knowledge to help you run your vision.
Wow. Then there's this other question coming in. Emotional management is the biggest problem in running.
But if
an
you
organization.
have to go for maybe students, okay. Can you hear me, Bunny?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. So I will, if you have enough money, right, investments and grants, and you need expertise, you're looking for high competency, you can go ahead and hire highly qualified people. But if you don't have so much money, you might want to actually consider recent graduates, undergraduates who would volunteer for you at different times. Now, the best thing is to have a large pool of volunteers so that when some people are not available, some other people are available. You might not be able to get everybody at once. So if you have about 1,000 pool of volunteers, some will be available at some times, some will be available at other times. So I think that's what you can do.
Okay, maybe you take on this one again. Emotional management is the biggest problem in running an organization and managing people. How best can one manage team members, even at their work? At their worst position.
I think this is a brilliant question because we face this every day. Every organization has, has challenges like this. And here's what I like to say. As a leader, you have a lot of work to do in managing people's emotions. Okay, understand that people are not perfect. We come from different backgrounds, we come from different personalities. However, the organization has rules, we have policies, and we have procedures, which means that when you come into the workplace, you would need to respect everyone in the workplace. So the fact that you had a bad day from home doesn't mean you should take it out on everybody and say, oh, I expect them to understand I've had a bad day. No. And sometimes it would require us to make an example of somebody. Permit me to say this. So here's the role that we give in our organization. We respect everybody's emotions. We respect you. There's mutual respect. Don't take out your anger or your frustrations on somebody else. At the same time, we love you. We want to learn about how you're feeling. If you're having a bad day, it's better to communicate than take it out on people. Okay. So managing team members at their worst. Some team members you might want to maybe leave them for a while, but some team members, you might want to call them and have a conversation with them. So as a leader, beyond the work, you ask your team members, how are you doing today? I noticed that you're frowning. Is everything okay? Is there anything you would like me to do for you? Are you having challenges with your work? And during those conversations, they will tell you, oh, this is how I'm feeling. I'm not happy, this and this. But don't assume that someone is just being nasty. Right? Assumption, they say, is the lowest level of knowledge. When you see your team members acting in a way that they're not supposed to be acting, the first thing is to have a conversation. Call them. But when you see consistent actions in that regard, when you see someone who is consistently behaving badly or disrespecting other people, then you want to sanction them. You want to make an example of them. You can either query them or you give them suspension or something, but you want to make an example. So don't encourage bad behavior for long, but ensure to have constant conversations and communication with your team members.
I have 2 or 3 more questions to go, but I think we still have a few minutes to wrap up this. William is asking, how do you detect plagiarism in case it's a written online interview?
Good question. Very simple. You are either using a plagiarism software. I mean, not even either. You have to be using a plagiarism software for you to detect plagiarism, except if you remember clearly where the document is from, or if you think you've seen this word before. But for you to detect plagiarism in a written online interview, you have to be using a plagiarism software to detect it. Yeah. Yeah, you have to use a plagiarism software.
And then there's another question from James. James is asking, in recruiting volunteers for our CBOs, do we need to emphasize on the experience in the specific role advertised?
Yes, actually, when we're recruiting volunteers, I understand that volunteers are not paid. But if you're recruiting a volunteer for, maybe for example, a volunteers coordinator, right? Someone, or maybe an operations manager, you will need to specify the experience. Because the fact that they are not paid doesn't mean they should come and do shabby work. And remember, anyone who is applying to volunteer already knows that we are not going to be financially rewarded. So they already know, but you still need to emphasize on the experience. Now, you can see people with maybe 5 years experience, but you want to consider maybe if the person has maybe at least 3 years experience in that role, it might be a good place to start. But you need to emphasize if it's for a coordinating role or for a management role, you need to emphasize it. But if it's for volunteers, maybe just at the entry level or at the junior level, experience might not be so, you might not need to emphasize on the experience, because the reason they have come to volunteer is because they are passionate about your cause. And so you should look at the passion for the cause over their experience. If it's an entry level, everybody kind of role, but if it's a management role, you will need to emphasize on the experience.
Thank you very much. Let me take on one last question here, then I'll give you time to wrap up the session. Thank you so much, Madam Oluwatoyin. Is it wise to recruit unpaid team members who have been working with you to assume professional positions?
Okay, if I understand this question, I think what Fode is trying to ask is it possible to those who have been working as unpaid to transfer them into paid professional positions? Yes, it's very possible. In fact, I will advise you to do that, because remember, they've been with you. They already know your vision. They already are passionate about your cause. They know the structure. They know how we work. And so it is best to even move those ones who have always been with you and move them into professional positions. And that's why you see a lot of organizations, first of all, do internal recruitment, which is that for someone who was maybe a finance officer, it's easier to promote them to finance manager than hire a new finance manager externally. Okay, so I will advise that you actually consider moving your unpaid team members to professional positions if they have the experience, if they have the competency, and if they are culture fit. Those are the things you need to consider.
Thank you very much. And now give you 1 minute to give your final shot to our participants today.
Okay, thank you all so much. This has been an amazing experience. I love what is going on in the chat section. You guys are one of the most engaging audience that I have seen. So thank you. And I hope that all the things that we've talked about from Tuesday and today, you will start to practice in your organizations. You would also take some time to go research more, on what are some of the things that you need to do, right, to achieve your vision, the kind of people you should be hiring so that you can get your ideal team. Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to seeing you some other time.
Thank you very much, Madam Oluwatoyin, for giving us your time today, and we don't take this for granted. I know a lot of take-home has been made from our participants during this session. It has been a wonderful one, and I want to remind us with the quote that you made last week, that having a great vision without the right people is actually just a dream cast in the air. So let's have this and practically implement it. And I want to thank everyone who showed up for this webinar, and we are grateful that you could spare this time to be with us. We are so much grateful. On behalf of WMI, I wish to thank you and also thank our scholars who have shown up in this webinar, and wish all of us a very grateful